Hey, what's up? It's Ryan Shazier, former NFL linebacker and host of the podcast Don't Call the Comeback. Football season is finally upon us. That means lots and lots of yelling, great conversations, and abundance of delicious food. There's nothing like a good game day food tradition. I love grilling. And on Sundays, me and my family love eating Oscar Mayer beef franks. It honestly can't get more classic than that. But you know, game day can't stop with just one food. I love making cheeseburgers topped with some extra melty Kraft singles. And you have to get a little fancy with it by adding jalapenos and crispy onions. I'm getting hungry even thinking about it. I love sharing game day food traditions with my friends and family. Now is your turn to show off your tasty game day food traditions. Go to www.gamedayfoodtraditions.com to share a photo of your game day food traditions to enter to win $10,000. Once again, that's www.gamedayfoodtraditions.com to enter to win $10,000.
We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror. Shut up!
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
Thank you, Lee. It's the 2023 college football season preview here at Split Zone Duo. I'm Alex Kirshner, joined here by Steven Godfrey. Richard Johnson will be back shortly. Steven, how are you?
I'm good. I'm wearing my home field Georgia Southern shirt, Alex, because we're going to see, I can't do segues like you can, right? We're going to preview a very hospitable climate today in the Mountain West. Whether you're in the mountains or whether you're down in San Diego or Hawaii, like chances are you're not complaining about the weather at one of these schools. I am in Nashville, Tennessee in July. I walked my daughter during daylight hours down to a playground in our neighborhood and came back with all of the lower back and shoulder and armpit sweat. And so I thought, and a bug flew in my mouth. And so I was like, you know what that reminds me of, Alex? Statesboro, Georgia. So I'm wearing a lovely Georgia Southern home field shirt.
Yeah, and that has a ton to do with the Mountain West. I totally understand exactly what you're getting at.
It was what I had. I needed a dry T-shirt. You're the segue guy. You fix it.
I will fix it. It's time to talk about the Mountain West Conference, a league that did not have, in my opinion, like a especially glorious 2022.
It was kind of
The season preview series rolls on. We're going through every FBS conference. We will also do some FCS and some independents before the season starts, and going with a discussion question format that is designed to take us around the league and give us just a sense of what is happening everywhere in the Mountain West this year. Mm-hmm. Godfrey, I'll get us started. What do you have to see this year to believe that any early 2022 concerns over the last few years about Boise State and their continued viability as the standard bearer of Group of Five football have been addressed and are finished? What has to happen for you to have no more worries about Boise State continuing to be Boise State?
I just realized I owned a Boise State T-shirt, but I don't know where it is. God, I ruined it. I think I already saw it. I think it's the quarterback play, and I think that the coaches in the league are talking about the quarterback play as almost a certainty going into this year. People are really, really impressed with Taylon Green. I think their willingness to be physical with his development and also run the ball really, really well. It's probably more of a bangy, smashy Boise offense than Boise's of Boise pasts. But Green got better as the season went on. He started 10 of the games it was 10 games they started, had 2,000 yards in those 10 games that he started. They have a really good backfield. If you're
couple of guys, a couple of really good running backs.
Richard and Alex are always rattling guys off, but if you're looking for like a skill position player that you'll probably know by name, but you don't right now, maybe George Halani, the running back at Boise State. If you're not like a huge G5 or Mountain West person, that's probably like one that you could watch out for.
They have
he's
a
the
couple.
Best back
they
in
also
the
have
league.
Ashton Jeanty. I think it's like a two-man backfield situation for them.
It is more than that. Based comp to the league was how it was described to me, of like they can go 2, 3, 4 on running backs. And then with the confidence that they have in Green as he develops as a passer and throwing off of the run is something Boise's always done, going back to the Chris Peterson ideology, like they're going to be really good at that. look, if the philosophy in Mountain West play, not necessarily like we're going to upset Oklahoma and change history, but like year by year, game to game in the Mountain West was like, we have more talent than you because we recruit like a Pac-12 program and you don't. So we can out finesse you and out talent you. If you just kind of switch that, you just modify it a little bit, which I kind of think has been the Avalos mindset. Shockingly, the guy's a defensive coordinator. They're just like, well, you know what? We'll grind you a little bit better than anyone can grind you because the talent disparity can do that and achieve and still have that gap as well. And I kind of think that's what they're doing. I think they're very comfortable with that. And I think they found themselves as they went on. I talk a lot about assistant coaches, but like you really got to talk about the fact that they, I forgot his name. He's probably happy I forgot it. But the OC that came from UC Davis who got fired.
Yeah, they fired. I think it was Tim Plow, right?
Yes,
and they brought back Bush Hamdan.
Yes, former Falcons OC. Atlanta Falcons.
Also a former Boise. I think this is what Boise does more than any other program, maybe in the country. Though I don't know that there's a way for me to prove this. But are you allowed to coach at Boise if you didn't play at Boise?
No, but it's not. But here, the fucked up thing is it's like it's not incestuous in the sense of like they make a lot of good hires of people who are associated with the program because the program really fosters counterintuitive thinkers in coaching. It's always like, I know it's not as fun to talk about Boise as it was 15 years ago, but the idea of just approaching things a little bit differently is still there. I think the shine went off is because the steward of their program for so long goes to Auburn and just completely implodes. But I do think Boise embraces counterintuitive thinkers in coaching because they kind of have to. They exist as an aberration. And so if they evolve to something that isn't as Peterson tree specific as it has been, that's okay. Because they do all of the other things really well. You know, I was reading in the news last week, they're evaluating stadium improvements, which is kind of crazy when you think about them compared to the league, but they don't compare themselves to the league. They think like a UCF or a Houston or, a Cincinnati in a conference in which that's nowhere near the norm.
No, here's the thing though. They haven't won this conference since 2019.
Yeah.
Of course, that's only 3 years off, but the last time that Boise State went more than 3 years without winning the Mountain West was never in their entire history as part of this conference. And Boise has been in this league for 10 full years now? Yeah, since 2012, since 2011.
Came from the WAC.
This is and obviously Boise kind of made a habit of winning the WAC just about every year during Chris Peterson's.
I think every single year that they were there.
So it's been a minute is the point since Boise has like start to finish been Boise. They looked a lot like Boise after their 2-2 start last year, where they also got like dog walked by UTEP in kind of a stunner. But then they also got beat at home in the conference championship game by a pretty good Fresno State team. And as you look at what might be a problem for Boise in this conference this year, like I don't want to completely write off 10 other teams, but this might be the most 2-horse racy looking league in the entire FBS. As we'll see if I feel differently after we've kind of gone through every conference in detail, but it should be Boise or Fresno, and Fresno is the defending champion.
Whoa, really? Well, all right, we'll unpack the latter part of that because I don't feel that way, but
it's interesting. Actually, there's something that we'll talk about, which is if someone else,
Boise, so
maybe Air Force. Okay, we'll get there.
Yeah. No, I'm taking umbrage with the fact that it's just gonna be I don't think it is, to be honest with you. So you were playing around with two thoughts, and I don't know if they're mutual. In fact, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. 2023 could be a year in which the entire Mountain West gets better, and Boise also is a shoe-in to win the conference championship because Boise got better as well. So it's not so much as the conference goes, so does Boise, nor is it as Boise goes, so does the conference anymore, which I think is good for the Mountain West because they have, the successes of the renewal of Fresno State, the defensive-minded success of San Diego State establishing that grunty, gross, punt and play defense identity. It's successful. Good. These are all good things. They don't have shit all to do with Boise, which is positive for the conference as a whole for depth. But we're going to have a weird thing this year where I think they both get better, and it just looks like a more traditional Mountain West season that we grew up on.
Yeah. There's also an opportunity here because with the American reshaping, you could look at this as a year where there's a decent chance for the Mountain West champ, if they are a one-loss team, to go and play in the New Year Six in the last year before the G5 gets a guaranteed playoff spot. But because I think Fresno is probably the biggest threat.
Pause right there. Boise plays at Washington to open the season in one of the best games in week 1. Alex, if they beat Washington and UCF,
yes,
that's what it would take. They're damn sure going to be in contention for at least the New Year's Six bowl slot, if not trying to make noise for something else.
Yeah, I didn't realize, by the way,
that is when it's going to depend on
yeah, but there's a Peterson Bowl this year.
Okay, so they do have like a New Mexico, but they don't have like New Mexico and Hawaii and Nevada. So could they make a Cincinnati type stink about getting in a field of 4? They would need a shit ton of help. I'm couching everyone's expectations.
You're just having fun. You're just doing fanfic.
Being the G5 guy.
So the reason I bring up Fresno, though, is that I think I can believe that Boise has stabilized. I don't think Andy Avalos is going to get fired. I think they're going to be one of the better teams always.
Oh, no,
at this
he's
level
good.
Of college football.
Yeah. Correct.
But to believe that Boise is like Boise, as we've come to know them, I think it's time for them to win this conference again.
Yes.
It's about time. I do think the biggest obstacle to that is probably still the team that got in the way last year, which is Fresno State. The game of the year in this conference is November 4 in Fresno. That's when Boise visits. And it could, as I'm kind of previewing,
bullish,
maybe be the first
on our Bulldogs here.
Well, the thing is, I'm not sure. And this is the thing. I think that if Fresno doesn't turn out to be good, then I think the door is wide open for Boise to win this league. Yeah. Of course, it should always be wide open. This is the first year for Fresno without sort of all three of their, I don't know, triplets, for lack of a better word, at QB, running back, receiver. They'd already lost the running back, Ronnie Rivers, who was there for a few years and was really important for them. But Jake Hayner's gone. Jalen Moreno-Cropper, the receiver, is gone. And those guys carried them on offense for several years through a couple of different head coaches. There's a new offensive coordinator there now as well. They lost their guy, Kirby Moore, to Mizzou, which is generally a sign that things are going well. Jeff Tedford's been around the block a few times. I have no reason to think he wouldn't hire a decent coordinator. They went the promotional route. They promoted their receivers coach to be the offensive coordinator there. So I don't know that Fresno has it this year, but they might. I mean, this is the thing with Fresno. It's like every year they're gonna have their 4-8 year, or they're gonna win 11 games.
No, this is an attrition year. I think this is easy. This is an attrition year because they've lost a high end talent. I think this is a regression. I shouldn't say attrition. It is attrition year, but it's regression. They're going to fall backwards a little bit. They're not falling off by any stretch, and they will be a formidable opponent. And when we sit and do this a year from now, absolutely, let's have this conversation. Look, this is a very simple point at the depth chart kind of regression year for Fresno State as Boise seems to round back into form. Now, I agree. The monkey's not off your back until you pull it. So that's fine if you want to give FSU their flowers right now. I'm nowhere near as bullish on that program without those names. It's such a shame that Jake Hayner had to retire after he found out he was drafted by the Saints. I don't know if you heard about that.
It's really hard. I actually didn't. I thought I might have missed something when you started talking. I'm glad you were just being terrible to your rivals. Steven, let me actually jump ahead because you mentioned, you kind of whispered at me a second ago that you're kind of an Air Force believer this year. I had a question about the kind of this next pack of Mountain West teams, if you will. Okay. San Diego State, Air Force, and Wyoming. I chose to build it around these three elder statesmen who have been in these jobs for quite a while, or in one case was in it and then came back to it. Brady Hoke, Troy Calhoun, and Craig Bohl. First, Godfrey, is Troy Calhoun interested in the job? And second,
well, the answer is yes.
Please explain which of these three coaches you think is the longest for their current position that they've been in for quite some time. And explain why the 2023 season is relevant to your analysis. If you want to gush about Air Force, you can do that.
TLDR on Air Force is returning starters is a weird and sometimes deceptive stat when you're just penciling in like a division favorite or a conference favorite. It's not when it's a service academy. It's not when it's the service academy that already won the CIC. That usually means like, oh, okay, like get bullish there. So that's the short version of why Air Force is like, I think belongs side by side with this regressed Fresno team as like a Boise challenger. That's where I'm slotting them. Okay.
See,
well, you're shaking your head. Why are you angry?
I think I sort of disagree, though. I know you've already said that this kind of analysis doesn't make sense for service academies. I think this looks like a step back year for them. Like they lost Hazik Daniels, pretty good quarterback, played for them. They lost Brad Roberts, the fullback who got the ball all the time for them and ran for like infinite yards last year.
Yeah, but don't they bring back?
I'm just thinking about, do you remember the year, I think it was 2015 going into 16, when Navy didn't just lose Keenan Reynolds, who was like maybe the best service academy quarterback like ever, but they lost Chris Swain, who was their main non-Reynolds ball carrier that year. And then Navy just kind of went into the wilderness. And now Navy just isn't good unless they have a transcendent quarterback like they did the one year with Malcolm Perry. And like, I don't know, kind of looks like Air Force just needs to replace a lot of production in the thing that they do, which is running the ball the entire game. And that doesn't always go well.
Like defensively with starters returning, with line returning, like you can rotate it. Like, again, that's why returning starters is a wonky ass stat, but it tends to feel good for service academies. I don't want to fall too far off this because I have to gush about Wyoming now. For the purpose of the question, you asked who remains in their job the longest. The answer is Craig Bohl. I think they're going to be building a statue. I think he's pine boxing it, is what I was told by people in the community. Like, is there some sort of situation in which he would go to X if some sort of Big Ten job? Nope. Barring the kind of off-field non-football infections of morality that seem to accompany these long-term legacy head coaches, like we just saw at Northwestern, Bohl is locked with Wyoming, and I think they're reliable enough under him to not really ever disturb the consistency, in that the consistency is a wave, right? It is Laramie. You're not perennial 9. You're not perennial 10, certainly, but you are perennial 8-9, 5-6. Like, that's kind of what people feel comfortable with him producing there, and I think he's capable of it. You're not going to have 2 and 10s, I don't think. And if there is, there should be an instantly identifiable reason why and an adjustment made to fix that if he's going to be his legacy as I'm talking about. This year, they could be legit good. I think the coaching staff really earned a lot of respect in that league by taking a roster that came out like a lot fucking lighter than it entered from the portal process last year going into 22. I don't know if you remember that, but the talking point was like, why did all these guys hit the portal? And then when you look at what they did, especially early on in the season, they did it like it's some fucking coach them up. It's straight up coach them up. So they're out the Texas game. They have Texas on their schedule. Throw that out. The 2 concerns that they're going to have in terms of challenging and then entering into the conversation where Alex wants to put Fresno and I'm kind of iffy on, they have road games at Air Force off a bye, and a road game at Boise off a bye. They don't really have a quarterback that they love because it's split between the Utah State transfer Peasley that was in under Gary, and then they have a walk-on who played kind of well and then kind of awful. But the defense was 24 points per game last year, and it's really hard to argue with a defense at the G5 who's going to do that. Also, I didn't do the math on this, Alex, because you didn't make me. In the 24 points allowed per game, they had 2 huge blowouts. Like, remember they did the quadruple overtime thing with Tulsa, and then they got boat raced by some like really good P5 to start the year. I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know if it was quadruple, but yes, it
was multi-overtime. Are you challenging?
It was multi-overtimes. You're correct.
And I stopped the podcast as I've been challenged. It was 2 overtimes. It was not quad. Would I say quad? It was 2 overtimes. I watched it. Yeah, so Illinois beat their ass at 38-6. And then they gave up 40 points and they gave up 37 points in what ended up being a win against Tulsa. But when they went through conference play last year, and by the way, they're returning almost all of these guys. 14 points allowed, 14 points allowed, 13 points allowed, 20 points allowed in a loss to Boise.
Look, the only team
that kind of whips their ass is Fresno at the end, where you just have a superior quarterback in Hainer. Like, this is how you talk about Wyoming being successful is what I'm trying to get to. They played Texas Tech to open the year in Laramie, Alex. I'm old enough to tell you this, and I also saw it with my own God-given eyes. P5s go in those season opening games to Laramie, and they fucking lose. Missouri
did that. Yeah,
Missouri's done it. Ole Miss has done it. Tennessee's done it. There are other P5s that have done it. And then, by the way, just a quick shout out. Fucking App State at Wyoming on September 24th.
It's a pretty SCD game. Yeah,
Godfrey ass game. All right.
Wyoming, in terms of guys to watch, has one in particular on defense. Devon Harris, he's an edge defender, had 8 sacks and 13 TFLs last year, and is back again to continue to sack quarterbacks in the Mountain West. Godfrey, you said at the beginning of this that you think he could be like a legacy guy there. It kind of looked you could talk about Wyoming in one of two ways, what I was starting to say. Like, one is the only Mountain West teams that beat them last year, or 2 out of the 3 were the 2 best ones that we just talked about. And other than that, they just lost a game to San Jose State before they really got it rolling, before they won 4 in a row. Another way to look at it is that their conference wins last year, other than Air Force, were New Mexico, Utah State, Hawaii, and Colorado State.
Yes.
And they did not show any of the Craig Bohliness that you would hope for against Illinois or BYU. And I kind of use that
those
to
were
preface,
young teams early.
Could it get stale? And if it gets stale, is he just going to stay there for forever and just, do that?
You'd have to have consecutive 3 or lower win seasons for this to be a conversation in Laramie.
Okay, very fair. On San Diego State, so I guess I'm going to agree with you that Craig Bohl might be the answer there, though I don't think Troy Calhoun is ever going to leave Air Force, so it could be either of them.
He's going to try, Hoke, Alex.
I'm starting to wonder if Brady Hoke might just be at San Diego State until further notice. He, on the one hand, you could look at him as a transitional coach, but he's done a pretty nice job. I thought for a minute last year that things were going to completely fall apart for them because, spoiler, they have never figured out how to score points at San Diego State under Brady Hoke. And traditionally, it is hard to be a G5 program and just go years and years and years without scoring any points. But they managed to be good enough to make a bowl game and to not embarrass themselves out of Pac-12 consideration. And everyone seems to get along. So maybe Brady Hoke is just there. One interesting thing that he's done is made a serviceable quarterback out of a safety. Jalen Maiden, who had been a quarterback, had gone to safety. They brought him back. They fired their offensive coordinator last year in the course of being kind of mediocre. Replaced him with Ryan Lindley, who I think of first as a very long time NFL backup, but before that, he was the all-time leading passer at San Diego State. It's if Brady Hoke doesn't lose a bunch of games, maybe San Jose State's just kind of in the, we're fine doing this, don't rock the boat mode with him. And that's actually almost a little disappointing because there's no real reason why they couldn't be the best team in the Mountain West for as long as they're still in that league, or why they couldn't make a quick splash in the Pac-12. So I'd kind of like to see Brady Hoke be a transitional coach for them at this point. I'd like them to hire someone who is going to help them score points. Yet the wheels haven't fallen off yet. It's my meandering thought on San Diego State.
So this question that you're asking about promising programs, I think it kind of cuts to the heart of some of our bullshit on our show, where we want to tell you to invest in things, and when they don't work out, we will try and rationalize it. UNLV and Colorado State. So these are the 2 programs that we're kind of always selling you as an upside. We're always trying to tell you things haven't been good, but they could be. And you know what? On paper, the fucking phrase on paper gets used all the time. And,
oh my God. We talk about these 2 houses in an up and coming neighborhood.
And
great
it just
lots.
Won't gentrify.
Yeah.
You just can't get rid of those pesky minorities.
Lots, but the Whole Foods is coming in so soon.
Okay, so on that semi-racist note, let me tell you about Colorado State. Again, the short version is you have to bowl this year, Alex. Not so much for Norvell, but for Colorado State. Just for a sanity, an appeal to sanity.
The question, by the way, that's going to set this up is first to show a sign of life. UNLV or Colorado
I'm going to go
State.
with CSU just because by virtue of a still sort of weird coaching change, CSU has the advantage here. And they've done the dirty work again. Now, part of this is don't have sympathy for Fort Collins. It's a lovely place where people are drinking craft beer and doing yoga and being white as fucking get out. But they hired Steve Adazio because Urban Meyer told them to. In the history of unforced errors in personnel departments, that's fucking up there, okay? You sullied a program for an extra 3 or 4 years because what? Okay.
I want to be clear that Urban Meyer told them to do this. We've done this a lot. He told them to do it after all of the Urban Meyer stuff. Actually, before the Jaguars thing, but well after the Zach Smith thing. It was insane. It was Alex, it's one of the most ridiculous things ever happened.
It was like this notoriously disliked progressive female president on campus who was the typical scary liberal to the jocks, and She confided in Urban fucking. Oh, okay. All right.
We all agree. Choir is being preached to.
One day, dead letters. Okay. Anyway, Norvell has a head start on doing yet another round of cleaning in Fort Collins. So what I specifically mean by that is, yeah, we're all exhausted about the on-paper potential here, but he either purposefully or inadvertently, like just by being very different than Steve Addazio, flushed the roster. Nobody was paying attention. Okay. The problem was Addazio's roster was already not great, because I don't know if you noticed, but like he was like trying to run the fucking Maryland Eye or something in like the Mountain West, and like it was a mess. So that set them back last year, but they basically front loaded their depth issues, and they said, like, we're going to lose up front. It's like sort of an NBA tanking situation almost, of like, we're just going to eat it now. And then when you go into all of the bad, you end up having a shitload of returning starters who are like committed to your program, are guys. And so if you look now, he's only been there a short amount of time, but it's like a lot of the starters are quote unquote their guys, either from quick recruiting or transfer portal. And you would assume there would be some improvement here. The problem, by the way, Alex, we're talking about bad offensive lines. All right. The last season preview we did, we absolutely harangued, like, Colorado is one of the worst offensive, like single worst units in college football is Colorado's offensive line, for everything that's being made about Deion Sun playing. There must be a problem with offensive linemen in this state, because Colorado State
they're too healthy, Steven.
That's right. You
ever go to Colorado? It's like looking at a Patagonia ad every time you walk around the state. They all run.
Like, they know how to. Yeah, that's what it is. Fucking running. We need more. Just drop cigarettes like MREs in Vietnam. Anyway, they signed 7 freshman offensive linemen because the unit was so bad. 7 freshman offensive linemen. The problem here for a year or two that I'm describing, and the sort of the sanity play of like, just get to fucking 6 wins, I don't know if it's here, because in that year 2 situation, what you want to do is have games that you're going to write off and just try and find that path to 6. And it's usually starting with home games, non-conference. Their hard games are at home. And so you have to count on winning on the road, and you open with Washington State, which is like, I don't see how you don't give that to Washington State, although notoriously volatile, will occasionally lose the Portland State program. This is just not that easy looking a recipe for a program that's just been begging to just have an iota of credibility. So I'll take Colorado State just for, I think, to pay my own penance. Like, this is like a Catholic guilt play where I just feel like, Alex, I need to atone for talking about how great this program could be, or how great they think they want it to be, and the spending of the money and all that, the stadium and all that shit, because Steve Addazio. Okay, sorry.
They're really invested though, Steven. They're really invested. You don't understand.
Steve
They're just so
fucking
invested
Addazio
at Colorado State. And the stadium is just absolutely beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
I'm going with UNLV. I think UNLV is going to make a bowl this year. 6-6. That's what I have them at.
That makes total sense, actually. Yeah.
It's their Vegas total. That's their hometown, by the way, Las Vegas. And it's also exactly what I got when I went and just did that extremely unscientific scheduling exercise that we all like to do this time of year, where you just go through and you go, oh, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, loss, win, 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 loss, win. Like, it's that kind of analysis. But if you look a little bit deeper here, I think that every game this team plays, except for the Michigan firing line that they're attending and Fresno State, could feel pretty toss-up-y. They don't have Boise on the schedule. You need to find 6 wins. The Marcus Arroyo era was saddening, because in 21, they weren't actually that bad and had some close calls against really good teams.
He got screwed.
Like, I don't entirely agree, but I don't entirely disagree. Last year, the reason why I don't disagree is that last year they started 4-1 and didn't make a bowl.
But they played better. I mean, they just played better teams.
And were eliminated from bowl contention before they won a 5th game in the throwaway at the end of the season.
Consensus was, even by agents who were trying to plug their own guys in at that slot, that was like, oh, like you kind of give him 23 to figure it out. Look, the AD went to Missouri. That's the shortest fucking answer here. The AD went to Missouri, and there was a G5 trend of hiring like some celebrity name that doesn't really fit to give yourself attention, which is a very Las Vegas. They've been trying to act like Las Vegas at UNLV for a long time, which is why Bobby Petrino was the OC here for 15 minutes.
And not a minute more than that. Bobby probably would have scored points here, and I actually think the offense might score points anyway. So Doug Brumfield, the quarterback, is legit. He's a dual threat, one of the better quarterbacks in the group of 5. They got one receiver, Ricky White, who had a pretty nice year last fall. He is back. The coordinator is Brendan Marion, who has bounced around to a lot of jobs, but was most recently receivers at Texas and Pitt before that. I have followed his career, disclosure, because he's a Pittsburgh guy who was at Howard in DC when I lived right by there. So I got to know him a little bit. He does things differently and had some pretty effective offenses as an FCS coordinator in different leagues, in very different leagues, at Howard and at Bill and Mary after that. I am kind of keen to see what they do in the Mountain West and in a climate-controlled indoor stadium as well, which I think is a factor. Kind of a funny circle story is that he coordinated the offense that won that game at UNLV that was like the 44-point upset, like the largest spread upset in history. And then you wind up at that school at UNLV.
It is funny.
The Pitt connection there is significant because I think one of the most important players for that team is a Pitt running back who he just brought with him, Vincent Davis, who was behind the excellent Israel Abanikanda at Pitt, but was a pretty decent back himself. I just think UNLV might be kind of decent on offense this year. I don't know that. I'm not staking that out. But 6-6 seems okay to me. And like you mentioned, that Barry Odom doesn't really fit. Like, why is he taking this job? Like, it's obviously a step back in his career. Why wouldn't you go and be a defensive coordinator at a P5? I have those same questions, but at the same token, like, Odom doesn't seem like a guy who will embarrass you. Like, he seems fine, like a perfectly cromulent G5 head coach.
If you were looking for fit, you had it. It was just taking longer than you wanted to. And also new AD gets to make his hire. I mean, I'm not trying to stump for Arroyo. It just still doesn't make a ton of sense. And Odom fits less ultimately, but they get to, I guess, like, are people buying tickets because of Barry Odom in the greater Las Vegas area? Very confusing. But I do think this, Alex, they will be better for it. I think offensively they're better coached for it. And this is not a bad football team relative to when I yell UNLV at you, you assume 1-11, and it's not that.
I would agree. So I'm going to say UNLV first to show a sign of hope over Colorado State. Steven, business, tell me about it.
Today's show and every other program that SCD produces exists because of you, not me, not Alex, you. You can go to patreon.com/SCD to support a completely independent college enterprise covering a sport that's swimming in conflict of interest. And it's very dirty water. Starting at $5 a month, you can gain exclusive access to extra shows, while other Patreon tiers allow you to help create our content by voting on show topics, submitting listener questions, and a lot more. We're here. We're honest. We love you. We want to eat the whole hog of college football. And Alex, we need your help.
Yeah. One thing very seriously about supporting the show on Patreon, we appreciate it because it's how we make our livings, but especially because, like doing the Mountain West preview and doing the MAC preview that we're going to do and yada, yada. Like, you don't do that because it makes the advertising dollars flow and flow and flow. We do it because it's how we want to cover the sport and because you guys support the work and you make it make sense. You make it possible for us to do it. So you're not only getting a lot of bonus shows if you subscribe to the Patreon at patreon.com/SCD, but you are quite literally making the business model work for us to do this kind of work. So if you enjoy it, we would love to have you. And
if for some reason you're a half hour into a podcast that's very clearly labeled Mountain West Preview 2023 and you're griping to your car in traffic, where's the Alabama talk? Pick one of 900 other college football podcasts to go and front run.
We'll do that too. We'll do that
eventually. But if you value what we're doing and you believe in this ethos, we kind of got to believe in you to believe in us.
And we are always blown away by how many people step up for us.
In your wallet. Speaking of Patreon, Alex is completing another opus. Season 2 of Dead Letters is almost finished up. If you haven't started already, that's perfect because that means you get to binge the history of how very bad things happened to once very good college football programs. Season 2 features everyone from FAMU to Colorado to Kentucky. The season finale, which will be up soon, is going to chart the course of the SoCon, the Southern Conference. And when you listen to that show, you will find many a foreboding metaphor of things to come in the sort of logicless de-evolution of the conferences and the Power 5 and the Big 2, and just the direction that we're seeing in college football. Alex, inside of the Big 2 is a state called Minnesota, eh? And guess what? I'm going to get a time machine. I'm going to go back in time, and I'm going to assassinate Kent Herbeck. You don't even understand that reference. You weren't born yet.
He doesn't mean that, again, in an actionable way.
Doesn't. It's fine. Yeah. It's a time machine. That can't hold up in court. Minnesota nice, you betcha. We want to see you in Minneapolis Friday, September 1st at Tom's Watch Bar 4. Split Zone Duo Live, driven by Nokian Tires. Our friends at Nokian Tires are taking us to the heart of all-weather country, baby. That is the night after the Minnesota-Nebraska game and the night before the FCS. I mean, just SCD as hell, guys. It's an FCS power showdown between Eastern Washington and North Dakota State at the Viking Stadium. So he's taking a breath. Just like the DC show, you can ask anybody who went to our June show in DC. There are only a limited number of tickets in our space. We were packing it out just like we packed out DC right next to the FBI building. That was very funny for me. Growing up an FBI kid. Had a blast in DC. Had big, loud fan interactions. We did a meet and greet, Alex, for hours, right?
Yeah, the Godfrey receiving line was a real thing. It was huge.
Well, look, I'm going to evolve to a mafia.
We learned who our frontman is that night by the Godfrey line. But in all seriousness, and I'm just trying to make him blush on the recording, it was awesome. It was just great to be with y'all. It was great to fill the room and to play to that crowd. We had a blast.
Split. No, not 3 splits, just one. SplitZoneDuoLive.com. That's how you get tickets. Again, SplitZoneDuoLive.com. Get your tickets now, and I'm not kidding. Finally, we want to give a huge thanks to our partners at Home Field Apparel. And a huge congratulations, because as you are listening to this as it comes out, as you are picking apart the intricacies of the Mountain West with us, you noticed that the Oregon Ducks finally have a home field collection. If you are unfamiliar with this, it's because Oregon had, a little bit of a history with a maybe giant corporate media Leviathan, a very litigious Leviathan, a Leviathan who would come out of the ocean and be like, we'll see you in court. That's infringement. Anyway, we have set that up twice, Alex, which I'm sure home field loves. It's really cool looking Oregon shit, which is impressive to say because Oregon is notorious for already having cool looking shit. This is a fantastic collection.
It's cool that the University of Oregon finally gets a chance to strike up a partnership with a well-known sporting apparel brand.
Get in there. I like it. Sassy. Way sassier than our advertising partners probably want us to be, but
That's a good point. Yeah.
The check cleared. The check cleared.
It's your fault. Editorial independence there.
It's your fault, Connor. They also have new drops right now for Notre Dame, Penn State, Maryland. And look, if you're a fan of the P5, you need to be refreshing home field because they are refreshing all of their lines slowly but surely. And they have this, I call it the 90s font. It's a very vertical, serifed kind of Times font that was it was the logo for Guns N' Roses and Nirvana. I don't know. It was very popular in the 90s and it's showing back up in home field stuff. And I love it. It's all over their new stuff. They also have a brand new UT Chattanooga, as Dan Mullen used to say. You can check them out at homefieldapparel.com. Use the promo code SZD20 for 20% off your first order. Might I recommend a Georgia Southern shirt? Maybe. Our thanks to Home Field for their sponsorship. Alex, take me to a truly magical. No, actually, no, it's really not.
Segway is not your thing.
No.
So 2 of the last 3 champions of this conference
it's Logan, Utah. That's where we're going.
Are Utah State and San Jose State. Neither of those teams to date has followed up their conference championship with anything all that good. Utah State got it together to some extent, but face planted out of the gates last year.
Yep.
And did not have an inspiring first season or was it second season under Blake Anderson? Time flies so fast the way that happens.
It's just 2 years.
2 years, yes.
Which is why it's even stranger to try and figure out what the hell this team is.
Yeah, this is his 3rd year at Utah State. And Brent Brennan and San Jose State, after maybe the COVID year conference title ever, where they went, I think, 7-1 and won the Mountain West and finished ranked, have gone back to 5-7 Winsville in the time since then. Steven, pick one of these recent champs to show something encouraging in 23.
I picked Utah State only because San Jose State vexes me. It was of the two, it was the lesser confusing. So I kind of, again, chickened out here. The vibes did get bad at Utah State. I don't know. I can't give you a scientific analysis or a football analysis, but I'm not sure what we have yet in the Blake era because the Mountain West title year has some, I'm not going to try and take it away, Alex, but maybe it has some identifiable exceptions. All right. There's a couple close wins on there. There's a roster. It's not really yours. it's smack in the middle of the Boise transition, although Boise whomped them that year. I'm really just going to say I don't know yet, because this staff off the field, Alex, and this is where we get kind of yucky, they were like touted as being like they were healing the locker room after the really contentious shit with Gary Anderson, and like Gary Anderson walking out on yet another football team because that guy is just like can't help but show how much of a prick he is, but yet can't help but get more jobs. And then Blake Anderson turns around and has the like really unconscionable fucking comments, and then the campus police chief's there about like rape culture, which is really weird because Blake Anderson probably had the benefit of every doubt in the national media because he was the longtime head coach at Arkansas State, and his wife battled and succumbed to cancer as he was in Jonesboro. And it was always kind of a weird thing to talk about privately with coaches because there's a genuine volume of empathy, as there should be, as any human being should provide. But in football, where it is a results business, regardless, Arkansas State was slipping. And so it was a weird move. Like, it made sense for Anderson to, the check, by the way, if you didn't know this, the check was a little bit bigger going to Utah State. He wanted a fresh start after his wife passed away. And things clicked right away in such a fast, like, really, honestly, I think his experience as a longtime OC, I think it generated a lot of energy on that offense, and things just worked. But I don't know how to sit here and explain this to y'all, because like they did lose a lot on offense. They did. Like, they lost, like, I think like 3 of their top 4 receivers going from the Mountain West title year to last year. All right. And I don't want to, like, again, I don't want to explain away a conference title as a fluke, but like, Alex, they did not score on offense against Weber State last year in a blowout loss to Weber State. Like, that was 3 games. I mean, it was an off season in between after they walloped San Diego State's defense. Like, that's insane. I don't have a way of explaining that, even off the record talking to coaches. They have had a very volatile amount of positive press, positive rumor, and then like they also
players suing the school over retaliation for releasing recordings of the coach saying something gross about sexual assault. Some Mad Lib,
there's a shitload of, but there's also like a shitload of kids who this guy who supposedly was like, we're gonna reinstall the family culture here. Like, he had a shit ton of portal defections after the title season. So like, there is something not computing here between that kind of debut and that kind of sophomore season. So is there reason for optimism versus San Jose State? No, I gave you the more confusing team, but I still think the team with the higher upside in 23. But damn, do I want to pay attention to Utah State on and off the field, because this guy has just been playing hard and fast and loose with media narrative for a long time now. And maybe we should just stop working in cliche as an industry and just start figuring out who this cat really is.
Yeah. On the other hand, Brent Brennan at San Jose State
it's like the total opposite situation.
maybe the least talked about, and I don't even necessarily mean that
friendly,
in like
it's just friendly dad. It's just your friend's quiet dad.
I don't even mean that in like the underrated way. I just mean like, this is not a man who generates a great deal of press clippings.
Alex, is the stadium done?
You're asking. I don't know.
No, I'm done. It's not a joke, because like for 5 years we would tune in and we'd be like, are they playing in a fucking like construction zone?
It's gotta be done. It's gotta be done about now. Oregon State's, I think, has to be done this year too. It looks like a gravel pit on television. Yeah. Playing in an active construction site is always tough, and San Jose State was doing it for a while. It's got to be done, right? It's got to be done.
I mean, let me check the Google.
So they had the 7-1 COVID year, and then other than that, the last 10 years here: 6 wins, 3, 6, 4, 8, 2, 1, 5. Then after the COVID year, they've gone back to 5 wins and 7 wins. So they have a few players on this team. Siobhan Cordero, the quarterback, is ex-Hawaii. He left in the big Todd Graham exodus. A lot of running backs here, like just kind of backfield by committee situation. There was a player this really great Montana State running back who committed to play for them, but then left after spring ball and went to Cal. And I think they were probably hoping that he was going to take a pretty significant share of the carries. defense lost a lot of guys, but hasn't been decimated. So it seems like San Jose State is like maybe the best bet in the country to win between 5 and 7 games. Like I would be stunned by 4-8. I would be stunned by 8-4. And so that's kind of how I would view San Jose State this year. Like, what is the most average group of 5 team imaginable? That could be a lot better than what Utah State puts forward. Could also be worse.
Scheduled for completion in August of 23. Alex, they're coming in under the wire on this motherfucker.
How does that always happen?
Dude, it's like a 6 or 7 year. Don't you remember? This is not a bit anymore, Alex, because now that I've done a quick amount of research, do you remember one season they pulled all of the seats out of one side of the stadium and it was a grassy knoll that they created as a temporary thing for a year? I'm not making this up. Go look at screenshots from San Jose State home games. Brent Brennan deserves better.
Depository there, or?
I mean, this is just super fucking creepy. Okay, anyway. August 23, they're coming. Look, no construction project finishes on time.
No. All right. So, yeah, I think to answer that question, who is likeliest to have a rebound season among these two? It's Utah State, but also Utah State is the likeliest to be firmly in the bad situation zone as well. Just a much wider set of outcomes there. Wouldn't be stunning if they made a run for the conference title to me, but also.
What are you basing that on in terms of just what, like, because they did get injured a lot last year.
They got injured. Also, Blake Anderson, and again, you've just talked about how things are weird, trending bad, sort of around the sky right now. But if I were just to pull up his record from Arkansas State, like, how many bad teams has he had? He's missed a ball once in his life.
It was a lot of fine teams because Arkansas State created that super weird precedent of
your coach gets
comes
hired
in for 1 year, 10 wins. Coach comes in for one. It was impossible to replicate that.
And a lot of those coaches, by the way, who were at Arkansas State for 1 year, went on to be pretty good at their next job. Even like Brian Harsin, who didn't become sort of a punchline until later, but or Hugh Freeze, same deal. Like, Hugh Freeze was there for a year, went to the SEC. Gus Malzahn was there for a year, went to the SEC. Brian Harsin was there for a year, Boise. Blake Anderson there for a very long time. He goes off to Utah State. And now Butch Jones is attempting, but it's taking a much longer time. We'll get to that when we get to the Sunbelt preview. Steven.
It's weird. Okay. We left the best for last, Alex. I like the idea of someone going, I'm going to commit to a Mountain West episode, and we did Boise first. Like, you could just be like, all right, scrub the rest.
So pick one.
Should have Boise last.
Pick one to end 2023 with a possibility at a bowl in 2024. Or if you want to go farther and say that someone's going to make the run this year, Hawaii, Nevada, New Mexico. 3 of the worst teams in FBS, full stop last year. All sharing the Mountain West with one another.
Just dragging the conference down. God bless Hawaii. We've addressed their woes on this program before. I will get to see them in person in week 0 because they're playing at Vanderbilt. Long exasperated sigh. I think Nevada is the default here, and I certainly don't feel good about any of these.
I disagree. So interesting. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, my logic here is that Wilson had to think based off of the very public
Ken Wilson, head coach of Nevada.
Sorry, Ken Wilson.
Former Oregon defensive coordinator, I think.
Right, Oregon assistant. And believe me, this thing's
maybe
like
not
fucking
coordinator. I gotta check.
It's like Eugene Southeast or whatever now. He had to assume in the way that Jay Norvell leaves and how public it was that Nevada just simply had a great coach doing great things, wouldn't commit and improve the facilities. So he goes to another Mountain West school that isn't Boise, who wants to pay him to do big and bold things. It's such a referendum against the program. Wilson is either being like, you know what, fuck, I need a lake house. So 3 years and fire me. That's door number 1. Alex, I would like to assume it's a little bit more than that for him. And so maybe door number 2 is the path of get this team, or get this, let's talk about it in terms of a program. Get this program bowl eligible, where Nevada's not going to help you with resources. They're not going to build around you. They're fucking NIL. You better be kidding me, right? Get them bowl eligible once. Flipping the roster as fast as possible. And if you've paid attention, he's doing that. And then you get out with the same speed. Because they have a lot of starting spots with their guys or Oregon transfers that weren't playing that much, or maybe were disgruntled or whatever.
He's brought a lot of down the depth chart, Oregon, especially this year, more this year than right when he came. Yeah, that's a lot of Oregon on the roster this year.
Some in each cycle. So, like, and then doing the quick eyeball of the schedule and talking and doing the Athlon rumors, I could say like a logical on this earth possibility is like a 4 to 5 win season if things break right and they go 2-2 in non-conference. But I can't take any of these schools to the much further than that. I obviously feel for Hawaii. New Mexico seems to be content to sort of wander in the desert, pun intended, both like in a practical and biblical sense. Like, I don't know. But Nevada here is like, maybe he sees something we don't, where it's just like the quickest real estate scam in coaching possible. Because here's the deal, Alex. If it gets out, it did, about how dire it is for coaches to go to Nevada because they're not going to support you. They want to be a basketball school, and you do win. Remember that thing we've talked about in coaching season where it's like, oh, you took that school to 7 wins? That's a big deal, right?
The Chris Creighton thing, though. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. What is Chris Creighton? Like, Chris Creighton winning 7 at Eastern Michigan means more than winning 10 at Boise, right? So in terms of like, oh shit, like, hey, you kind of turned and
hasn't gotten him a job. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
so I'm going to
I won't finish that thought until a later Patreon show. So that's as close as I can go on this question. Are you about to make me feel foolish or?
No, not foolish. I mean, we know we're just kind of buying lottery tickets here. I would make the case for New Mexico. You know who UAB's...
Okay, sell me on this, dude.
You know what UAB's guy, Bryant Vincent, did after Bill Clark put him up for that job at UAB and they hired Trent Dilfer? Well, you don't know. Why would you know? But I'm going to tell you.
Oh, yeah. I do. Okay, yeah.
Bryant Vincent...
130 teams, man. I can't remember
everything. No, that's just something that I didn't know until I got into this preview research. Just full disclosure. Like, I'm not always up on who New Mexico's offensive coordinator is. But Bryant Vincent, who was the interim after Bill Clark exited from UAB, and who a lot of the players at UAB, for whatever it's worth, and it's not nothing, wanted to be the head coach of that program before they hired Trent Dilfer. Obviously not going to stick around and be part of that staff. Don't even know if he had the option. He goes to New Mexico, where he is now under Danny Gonzalez, who has won 2-3-2 in his first 3 years in Albuquerque. I'm intrigued by this. UAB, of course, has been a little bit more defensively savvy than offensively savvy, but Vincent brings along the quarterback, Dylan Hopkins, from UAB. And the two of them did some decent work together. Like, Hopkins was one of the, actually, I wouldn't say he was one of the best, but he was, I think, an average to slightly above average group of 5 quarterback for several years at UAB. And you could just talk me into that, like, import of OCQB at a place like New Mexico as raising the floor a decent bit. And by the way, when I say raising the floor a decent bit, I mean they were 131 out of 131 in offensive SP plus last year.
Jeez. So
I am pretty confident that they are not going to be that this year. That's a far cry from, hey, you can flirt with a bowl. Like, it's really, really hard at New Mexico, but I'm into that import of coaching QB from a pretty good program that has won a lot of games. Like, if you're New Mexico, that seems totally worth trying to me. And in Hawaii's case, maybe they got a scat back, Tylen Hines, who I think is really fast and needs to get the ball a lot and also not get hurt. It's very small. They were just a little better maybe last year than we thought. Like, I think they were.
Let him heal. Yeah.
Right. Like, it's, I think this is year 0 now. Last year was year -1.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's a hard situation, but Timmy Chang seems to want to be there and want that job. And so I hope that it gets better. Like, we've covered it. Like, they're playing in basically a high school field right now. It's hard. Todd Graham left him in complete disrepair. Like, one of the most spectacularly bad tenures in recent times. So I hope it works out for them. I think the best case, though, that I can state for any of these 3 teams to have a year is New Mexico. I think they catch a little fire with the coach and the coordinator.
Okay.
The quarterback and the coordinator. Yeah, we'll just see.
It's a lot easier to stomach than trying to figure out why someone would take Nevada for anything other than a retirement fund.
I am also completely, I think I talked about this time last year, just in the tank for the state of New Mexico in general. I think that of all of the states that I've only been to like once or twice, I think like I might feel the most kinship with New Mexico. Just love that place.
I thought this was your thing with Tampa.
Yeah, but that's mostly, that's like half a bit. I feel like Tampa's like Pittsburgh, but in Florida.
The Tampa thing's
whereas
a bit,
Albuquerque Albuquerque is like one of the best food cities that I've ever been to. Taos, New Mexico is one of the prettiest scenic places that I've ever spent a couple of nights. I think I'm in on New Mexico. They put green chilies in their burgers in that state. Breaking Bad, one of the great TV shows of all time, set in that state.
This is funny. I
want the Lobos to be better.
I like it when he gets really earnest.
I went to a minor league baseball game across the street from New Mexico Stadium.
Okay.
At the home of the Albuquerque Isotopes. Looked over there and thought to myself, I've not been to Las Cruces, no. But I looked over there and I thought to myself,
table all this goodwill. Sorry.
Thought to myself, wow, it would be nice if there was a good team in that college football stadium. So New Mexico, baby, I'm with you.